Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the official YouTube channel of the Southall FC Independent Supporters Association. My name is Mark Roach, and I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest to our YouTube channel. Gordon Hill is a former Southall winger who went on to win the FA Cup with Manchester United. He was United's top goal scorer 2 seasons running. He also played for England, and he played for a number of other clubs, including Millwall, Derby, Queen's Park Rangers, and several clubs in the USA. And we're absolutely honoured that Gordon has accepted an invitation to be our very first patron of Southall FC Independent Supporters Association. So, hello to you, Gordon, and a very warm welcome to our YouTube channel.
Thanks, Mark, and it's always nice to see how the supporters in the semi-pro world actually start to get going. So, a lot of favourite stories.
Well, yeah, we'll come to that, and but firstly, just want to say a huge thank you from all of us connected with Southall FC Independent Supporters Association for becoming our very first patron. So, how do you feel about being our first patron?
Well, it's an honour because obviously it was the first club that I played for. I was with my brother Sid, who played at the beginning, but it's an honour, and as I said to the history goes back, and as I said, I'm wearing a shirt that I'm being kindly given, which I'm going to show everybody here. So it tells you how long the club's been around and what it's been doing. So yeah, I had some good days down at the Western Road.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since Southall were at Western Road. But going back to your time at Southall,
Hmm.
just looking back now, could you have imagined all those years ago that you were sort of embarking, you were on the start of a journey that would take you to be top scorer for Man United, win the FA Cup with Man United, play for England? Could you have imagined or dreamed of any of that, do you think?
I dreamed of it when I was about 9, 10 of obviously playing, get, having to be, say, so for instance, Pele, Puskás, Di Stefano. You do that as a kid, and I think it's just gone from there stronger. And when you start playing at 12, 13, I played for a club in Sunbury called Sunbury Celtic, and I think I scored 176 goals in 2 seasons. So I think I was destined to do something, rather than just run around Queen's Park Rangers training ground at 12 years of age. But yeah, it's lovely memories, and I don't, I couldn't wish for anything more.
And just taking you back, you talked about QPR there, and what?
Mhm.
Why was it that you chose Southall? So it was to do with your brother, wasn't it?
Yeah, my brother Cyril, Sid as we call him, he's always been called Sid. Um, he played at, we used to go and watch a little bit of Walton and Ersham, and I used to always enjoy going training with him. And he said to me that he had a chance to join. I think it was Tommy Tranter at the time that was the Borough Road coach. And he said he was going to go there. And I said, "Do you mind if I come along, Sid?" So we got his little Popular out from the garage, and we made the drive over. And it was great because there was a lot of decent players that were playing because they played for Borough Road at the time, a very much a sports college and still is. And I went out there, and I think I was 50. I think what happened was that I didn't go back to Queen's Park Rangers at 15. I didn't want to. And I basically said, well, I want to keep training. I'm playing for a local under 16 side called Hamworth FC. And I said, basically, can I come training with you, Sid? Because I still want to play. And he said, yeah, he said, I'll take you. And I used to go down, and then my brother left, and they asked me to stay. And I was only 15, I think 16 at the time. And then they said, well, we're playing in the Athenian League. I think it was the Athenian League. Don't get me wrong, but if I can remember, and then I went, yeah. Then it was okay. I'm now playing in semi-pro football, and training on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and then playing on a Saturday. Uh, and I think that's the route that a lot of players and a lot of kids were looking to go if they weren't signed as an, a, an apprentice with a pro club or a pro. So I did that, and I enjoyed myself, scoring goals. I think I scored about 22 goals in short time. And next thing I know, that a Millwall scout, Dave Phillips, had said he'd seen me play. Would I be interested in going for a trial? Well, I've obviously spoken to the club, and the club said, yeah. And I wanted, I said, okay, fine. So I think I had one trial for Millwall, and they signed me. And I think Southall got a bag of balls for me, which is cheap in today's market. So I signed for Millwall, and my journey had started. I was playing all the local clubs at Southall, Hayes. I think it was Hayes Town at the time. All the local clubs, which I grew up watching. I grew up going to see on a Saturday afternoon. So it was really just following in my brother's footsteps, so to speak. And I did that, and yeah, Southall was the start of something nice for me.
And then obviously you did really well to catch Millwall's eye, and then at Millwall, that was a big springboard for you, and you went on to achieve such great things with United, reached two FA Cup finals, 76 and 77. So
Yeah,
you lost in 76, but you won in 77.
yeah.
You played for England, and you also had some great times and great experiences, I'm sure, playing for other clubs in the UK, in the Netherlands, Finland, Canada, and the USA, which is where you're based now. So looking back at all of that time, all of those experiences in those different countries, how do you feel looking back on all of that, and from where you started at Southall?
I think what I do is I actually sometimes I go back to when I played down my street in Leighton's Lane, Sunbury, and played against the fences and played against the lampposts and the curbs, and then taking the ball over the local park, Cedars, which we called the Wreck, and getting all the boys from the area, so to speak. They come down, and we always invited the kid couldn't play that well, but had the ball. And we used to invite him, and only because of his ball. And so we used to like let him go in goal or something, put the sweaters down, which is football through and through. And we'd put his sweaters down, but the only problem is when his mum called him in for tea, he'd have to take his ball with him. And so yeah, we went out there and we had some really good times. And then I think at 14, I think I was playing for Sunbury Casuals, which was a local Sunday side, which my brother Sid played for, and my other brothers. And I played out the local park, and Mum was the tea lady, and so we'd always get a good cup of tea at the end of it. And I'd play there on a Sunday, and I remember things like taking the goals out of the old air raid shelter and putting them in the wooden sleeves, putting the crossbar on, putting the nuts on, and the nets where they had what they call the continental nets. But in them days they were continental because you put two poles up at the back and hooked the net up so it would stay up. And I think that was the best was when you got to a field that had nets because you didn't have to run that far if you hit the net. And that was playing with along with good sides from Brentford and around the area. So baptized about 14. My brothers used to protect us because they used to try and take lumps out of me. But I loved it because it was growing up in an environment that was pure football.
And that was your apprenticeship, if you like, wasn't it? It was
Yes.
probably, the best introduction to football for you. And
Oh,
and
yes.
how important Gordon, do you think it is that players who go on to become successful, that they remember where it all started for them? How important is that?
I think that's been lost over the last few years. Well, more than a few years. I think it's been lost because now what they do is they tend to, it's all about money, money, money. And it's when I signed for United, I walked up the stairs, marble stairs. I was 19, 20 years of age. I just come out of Millwall. I come from the den where you had to earn your respect and you had to earn your way because it was a very tough club to play for and it was a good club. It was it was Southall, Millwall, and then that massive great jump from there um, to Manchester. And in all thoughts, I was looking at either going to Tottenham because Tottenham came in the morning after I signed for United. But I remember that I walked up the stairs at Manchester United and I signed the contract and I came out and I was going downstairs to stay in the hotel for the weekend game. And then I remembered, so I walked back upstairs and I knocked on the door and they opened the door and there was Tommy Docherty, um, Jimmy Murphy, Sir Matt, Louis Edwards, and Frank Blunstone and Tommy Cavana all standing there, having a drink, having a glass of champagne and a cigar. And I was on my own, and I just said, no agent. And I turned around and I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Yeah, I know I've just signed a contract, but can you tell me how much am I going to earn a week?" And they said, "Don't worry, son, we'll look after you." And I just went, "Okay, fine." And then I went that evening. I went to watch Man United play Man City at City's ground with the great Colin Bell, who got injured in that. So it was a journey that started, and I think when you're welcomed. I played for Millwall at Old Trafford, and it was like the Lions were in the opposite den because Old Trafford was 50,000 and that was a den. And I always remember running out, we got thrashed 4-0, but it was just, we were in awe of so many fans, so many people, so many shouting out. It was deafening. And yeah, and I went, "Wow, this is my stage." And that was it really. And so I just moved on and I was so thankful to Southall. I was so thankful for Millwall. And I just kept on looking up and the next thing I wanted to do was play obviously for my country, which
Yeah,
I did. I did at youth level. I did at under 23s and then I did a full international.
yeah, and just looking back at all those achievements with United, playing for England, what are some of the big highlights of your career personally?
I think personally, you have to pinch yourself every time I went out at Old Trafford. Pinch yourself to say that you was one of 11 players, no names on shirts, but just numbers. And you knew that you was in from 1 to 11. And I'd always be 11, 11. And you'd look at the team sheet on a Friday and you was, yeah, yeah, okay. And you tried to not take it for granted that you was playing. But when you saw it and it was the same team as last week because of the consistency, then basically number 11, and that's the shirt that was mine. And and other players wore it. That's great, but it was mine. And I think you tend to believe that. And it was just you trained to play on a Saturday. And unfortunately, I look at it now and I wonder if it's they play on Saturday to train during the week.
And looking back at your time at Southall, you're one of a number of players who've played for Southall, gone on to play for England, including Les Ferdinand, Alan Devonshire,
Yeah,
and some other really well known names as well.
absolutely.
Um, and obviously for the local community, this it's a big deal, isn't it? And to see one of their own, like yourself, go on and do well, that's a proud moment for the fans, for the community, and that
Yes.
spirit of amateur football, of non-league football, isn't it, really? So it's kind of nice that you've been on that journey rather than a lot of the players, they get picked up nowadays from a very young age at a club, and they don't necessarily have that experience. They might go out on loan, but you talking about kicking the ball around in the street, playing local football, Sunday football, putting out the nets and all that sort
Yeah.
of thing. What a journey. You must, like you say, you must look back sometimes and think, well, look, that's where I started. I had a dream and it came true. It's a fantastic story, and it's amazing to have you here with us, and really appreciate you accepting our invitation to become a patron as well.
No, no, I mean that is great. I mean, all supporters in the semi-pro world, as I call it, I love going back when I come home. I love going to a game. I love going to a semi-pro game because I stand on the sidelines and I stand on the terraces and lean against the fence. I get a cup of tea or a pie, and I can watch the players, and I just look at their faces, and you can see what their drive is, and the way that they commit themselves, and they're not fortune hunters. They're players that want to play. They're players that they're not apprentices where they're very looked after now. They are players that have gone through the system and maybe not made it, but it's not the case of not making it. It's like a second chance. And the semi pro world has groomed so many great players from the semi pro world. The semi pro world has got to be looked after because that's our bread and butter of players that show the true grit and determination, not driving a Mercedes or a Porsche or a Rolls Royce. It's those type of players that you know that you're going to get 100% out of. And like with Southall, I enjoyed it because it was. I think you play on a grass field in a park, and it's open. The dogs run across it, and you're telling people to get their dog off the field and all that. You might only have two coats or two sweaters down there, but they're still on your field. Oi, get off our field, will you? And of course, they look around, and there's no lines or anything, but they recognise it, so they tend to walk around the invisible field, and that's really great. And then I think what is you grow up with, well, I tell you what, that's a nice. They got a nice little stadium over there. I'd like to play in a stadium one day. And slowly, what I've managed to do was go from a small stadium, Southall, to a bigger stadium, Millwall, to a bigger stadium, Old Trafford, to the biggest, best one is Wembley. So I've gone all that stairway all the way to the top, but it's great doing that. But what I have to stress is that at 23, at 24, I suffered a bad knee injury, and I have a titanium knee now. But that's because I put everything into me football, and I couldn't think of doing anything else. But the thought of the surgeon saying he may not play top class football again drove me on again, drove me on, and now I say to myself, wow, and I think every player, well, I say, I wonder what I could have done if I hadn't have had a knee injury. Well, we could say that about tons of players, all the great players, but there comes a time when even now, and I'm 71, and I look at it, and I'm out there kicking the ball with I have an academy, a centre of excellence, and I'm out there kicking the ball with them and everything else. And you still have that kid in you, the brain says go and the body says woo, so you still got that inside you. And now I get so much joy out of watching the little and developing the little guys
Yeah,
and,
'cause
and, and helping players on their way.
because football's been your life, hasn't it? Like you love
Yes.
football and you're still involved in football. So you're based
Yeah.
out in the US. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and what you're proud of with what you've been doing since you've been living in the US.
Well, I've now got United Sports, which is obviously named because it's United, but I named it United Sports. And what I do is I develop young players, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. As we speak, I've just finished a fourth game with a UK team under 23s that came over here to play, and I got them. They asked me if I'd get 4 games from them, and I got 4 games, and it was for Cheadle Town, a guy called Chris Davis, who sadly passed away 3 days after arriving here. Chris Chris had organised tours for the 50 years and had been to Cuba, been to Brazil, in India. He'd been all over with a team, and he asked me if I would do the 97th, 98th, 99, and he wanted his 100th game abroad. And he died 4 days ago in England. He couldn't even make the trip. So I've been working my tail off to get these games. And so it's just a pleasure to help players and clubs to achieve something where the haves couldn't even bother. But when I got the 100th game, which was yesterday on Sunday, I now can let Chris go to heaven with the 100th game. And so for me, I've done my job, and now I go back to looking on one side of the game and now looking on the other side by developing 10, 9, 8-year-olds to be the next generation of player. Doesn't matter where they come from. If they want to play football, I'll be with them. I'll help them as much as I can.
Well, Gordon, it's been absolutely fantastic to speak to you, and I'd like to say a huge thank you, not only for joining me today, but also for accepting our invitation to be Southall FC Independent Supporters Association's first ever patron. So thank you so much.
That's very kind of you, and I wish everybody and always wish the clubs the very, very best and to do well. And I will be back down at Southall to watch them play, I promise you, before my time is up.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Gordon. And look, if you'd like to be part of Southall FC Independent Supporters Association, which we're calling SISA, SISA for short, a really good starting point will be to find us and follow us on Facebook. And it's pretty easy to do that. Just search on Facebook for Southall FC Independent Supporters Association, and you'll find us on there. So, massive thank you to Gordon. We're delighted and honoured, Gordon, that you're our first ever patron, and thanks for your time. And thanks to all of you who have been watching this, and we'll see you again next time.
I'd like to just say thank you to the chairman as well,
Yeah,
Mr. Sharma, who's been very kind and sent me the shirts. And I wish you all the very best in your up and coming season.
yeah, thank you, Gordon. Absolutely fantastic to speak to you, and some lovely memories there. And
Thank
obviously,
you.
Man United is a part of that. England's part of it, but Southall is a big part of that as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Very kind.